Hello folks and welcome to oURgaME. As always, myself Shane Stapleton, joined with you by Michael Verney. Michael, we have just got an absolute avalanche of GAA coming this weekend, but where else did you want to be?
Yeah, an absolute bonanza, Shane, of GAA, and obviously the Hurling League kicking off. And there's just a bit more meaning to the league this year, thank God, because the last couple of years I've seen so many games that just with very little meaning. You don't know what you were really looking at. You don't know could you read much into what you were actually seeing. Whereas now, like, there's no point in saying any different. Teams are going to want to finish in the top three and make sure that they're in the top 7 for next year. I think it's top 3 from 1A, top 3 from 1B go straight into Division 1A next year, and then the 2 4th place teams play a playoff and the winner goes to 1A. And I do think it's important because there's ramifications to being in 1A and 1B. Fair enough, maybe you could say if you're in 1B in 2025, you could trial more. But if you're in 1A, your gate receipts are higher. You're probably more likely to be on TV. There's more money coming into the county board. And if you're blooding players, you're blooding them against the best, realistically. And you see it in Division 1 in football. Those teams that are up in Division 1, they are battle-hardened from the start of the season to the end of the season because they're coming up against the best. So I think there's a little added importance to the league this year.
Do you care about the Six Nations this weekend?
I am blind to it at the minute, I have to say.
I had no idea it was on until I saw a team announced yesterday.
Yeah, I think maybe it's because the World Cup doesn't seem like that long ago. So, like, I very little
successful World Cup.
I've very little interest in watching any rugby at the minute now, I have to say. Maybe when they play England or something like that, I might be sucked in a bit, but I haven't got too much interest at the minute, to be honest with you.
Okay, look, we're going to focus initially on hurling. We're going to have Adrian Ronan on, former Kilkenny hurler and commentator with KCLR. We'll have him on soon enough to talk a little bit about Kilkenny against Wexford. We're going to have Kyle Coney, former Tyrone footballer, on to talk about Derry against Tyrone, and Mickey Harte hosting his own up at Celtic Park. That's going to be class. But let's just start off talking about, broadly speaking, who needs to have a good league, right? And one of the things we were just talking about before the show is we have a lot of managers in year 2. Keith Rossiter is in year 1 with Wexford, so he'll get a bit of a grace period. Year 2, Davy Fitz with Waterford. He'll want to make a real impact. He knows his players. Same case for Liam Cahill, Pat Ryan, Derek Ling, of course. And obviously Derek Ling had a big year last year anyway. So, he's probably got everything on the right footing. But in terms of like the schedule, March 17th, that's the end of the regulation games in the league. March 23rd and 24th would be the league semi-finals and relegation. April 6th and 7th would be the league final. Championship starts April 21st. So let's say you finish the league just normally March 17th and then April 21st is your league game. You're looking at 5 weeks off. 5 weeks is a fairly long period, isn't it?
Yeah, it's long enough. I actually think probably getting to a league semi-final or something like that, or getting to that playoff stage and getting that extra game and probably having 3 weeks lead in or something is probably perfect. But like once you're in the semi-finals, you can't just decide to not get to the final or whatever. So, and listen, Limerick showed last year. I think there's 2 things they showed last year. They showed that you can win a league and go well in championship, but they also showed that they probably even the expectation and hype around them was built up as a result of the league. And then took a fair, like it came crashing down a small bit against Waterford, and we're probably lucky to come out with a win intact after that game. So it is a difficult balancing act. You can't be on from minute one to the last minute of a championship. You kind of maybe need to build up to it to some extent. So I think Limerick will. I'm not saying they went bald-headed for a league last year. They probably didn't. It was just the way it worked out. But they'll probably just be happy, I'd say, to get their 3 wins this year because, like, are they trying to learn much more about many players? Not really. Whereas the Chase and Pack need to learn probably a hell of a lot, I'd say.
So just in terms of back to who would like to have an extended league, I think it's pretty obvious that Tipperary would because they're not out in the championship until the 28th of April. So if their league ended on March 17th, you're then looking at 6 weeks. Now, in some ways, I'm sure you can get a really good block of training done. You'll probably get a challenge match here and there. But especially when there's such a huge panel, I was talking with Shane Brophy about this yesterday on Tipcast. You could line up the guts of 40 players there who have a realistic chance of pressing for a position. Obviously, that's kind of good in the sense that you've got a depth of quality. But the flip side is, there's a reason that it's good that Limerick can probably name 13 of their starting team. They're all of such stellar quality. So there's good and bad. But Tipperary could do with the extra couple of games to bridge the gap, number one, but also to give these players exposure to top level, opposition.
Yeah, I think your sound is kind of echoey a small bit, Shane. So I'll give you a minute to try and get that rectified there. But I think Liam Cattle kind of has said basically already that maybe they went about things not maybe the right way last year, and it was kind of something similar to Waterford in his last year as well. They probably hit the ground running from the start, had a very, very good league campaign. Tipp had a good league campaign last year. They gave Limerick plenty to think about in that league semi-final. And then all of a sudden, the championship definitely didn't finish the way Tipp would have liked. And Cattle has already said, as we said on Monday's show, he said he thinks it's taken him a good bit of time to adapt to the way they're playing. Interesting, we were chatting to Pat Ryan a couple of weeks ago, and we asked him, "You're going to approach the league pretty similar to what you did last year, with giving a lot of faces time?" And he kind of said, "Not really, to be honest with you." He said, "We kind of know what we have after last year," and he said, "Lads will earn their starting place or earn a go in training." So that would suggest that when the Fitzgibbon is over, that they will predominantly be playing mostly the same faces and trying to get a consistent team. I suppose that was the thing last year with Cork. Yeah, lots of lads kind of showed up well at different stages throughout the league. Had we any idea what their starting 15 was going to be, even at the end of the league? Probably not. So, I think there's a fine balancing act between giving lads their chance and also knowing, okay, he's going to be 3, he's going to be 6, there's going to be 8, 9, there's going to be 11, 14. He's probably going to be cornerback. We'll probably know our half back line. Really, and when you talk about Limerick there, and you mentioned it there, all the great teams down through the years, there's maybe 1 or 2 lads coming in here or there, or someone can drop out and someone come in, but 12 or 13 are your starting team. I'd say Kilkenny aren't in that position going into this year. I'd say Cork aren't in that position going into this year. I'd say Tipp aren't in that position going into this year. So maybe they know themselves and have had conversations behind closed doors, but we haven't seen consistent outfits from any of those teams, really, any of those teams in the Chase and Pack. Similar with Galway as well. You're not 100% sure who's going to be playing 3 or 6 or 8 or 9 or 11 or 14. Do you know what I mean? So they have a lot to learn and a lot to nail down over the coming weeks and months.
Okay, is my echo gone?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. I'm going to quiz you. I wasn't planning on doing it, but you're a bit of an anorak for GA. So I'm going to ask you in terms of when teams last won the league. So this has to be as quick fire as possible. Last won the league, Tipperary.
2008.
Correct. Kilkenny.
2018.
It was that shared title with Galway.
No. A league final. The last one, a league final against Tipp in 18 in Nolan Park.
I agree. It doesn't count. So we're not going to count it. That's brilliant. Limerick are the current champions. I'm not going to ask you that. Cork.
Was it 98?
It was. Good stuff. Good knowledge. Wexford.
Oh, Janie. Cork beat them after 3 games in 93. Oh, I don't know where you're going back to. Never won a league?
72.
Here.
72, 73.
Well, be something wrong if I got that.
Offaly.
91. They're only one.
Correct. Waterford.
2022.
Correct. Dublin.
Oh, Cheney. Oh, sorry. 2011.
Yep. And the last one I'll ask you, I think I've asked you about every team. Yeah, well, we've mentioned Galway there. The only other team to win a league title, top division, Clare.
2016 beat Waterford after a replay.
I'm telling you,
I'm very happy with that, I have to say.
I'm very unhappy. I was hoping to make an ape out here.
Well, listen, a quiz is no fun, really, unless you catch somebody out. That's the whole point of it, really.
I've been stitched up here. See a comment here from Hurling1234. Connor Bradley class. Are you aware of who Connor Bradley is?
No, is he Tyrone? A Tyrone chap that's playing a bit with Liverpool now. Is it Liverpool?
I'm telling you, he's given exhibitions for Liverpool. He had 2 assists and scored a goal last night against Chelsea. And Traumspieler says Connor Bradley unreal last night. Made me think, would he ever make it as a Tyrone senior? Unfortunately not, because he doesn't have the bulk. Sad reality that strength more important than skill in GA. I don't think that would preclude him from playing. Like the average soccer player is built very differently to a GA player. They're kind of more lean running machines, greyhounds. But like, there's no reason you couldn't bulk him up. And maybe if he's more height-wise, I'm not exactly sure of his height, but even if he was Derek Hannivan's height, you could put a bit of bulk on him and maybe he could be a player like that.
He'd be conditioned differently if he'd been through the GA system, though, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. Hurling1234 says many counties have panels out. A few the likes of Cork do, and we'll actually look at that in a moment. But just to revisit the topic on who needs a good league, I'm looking at Kilkenny's first game in the championship is at home to Antrim. And look, we're going to give Antrim every bit of respect they're due. We always talk about them and the quality they have, but they're missing a lot of players this year. Traditionally in the championship, they're going to struggle against Kilkenny. So I think Kilkenny, if they got to the league final April 6th, 7th, and it was 2 weeks later that they were out in the championship against Kilkenny, and then they're away to Galway the following week, I think they'd be okay with that. I think they'd be okay with getting league final.
I do agree with you. I think you have to. Counties will take their calendar into account, and some counties will think, like, we're probably not going to get a decent challenge game. An in-house game is grand. We can do that 10 days or 2 weeks out. But if we can get another competitive game, we'll take it. And I call a spade as well. The Leinster counties can probably afford to have a greater crack at the league, because while they are playing an extra game in Leinster, it is an awful lot less taxing than going through Munster. So you can kind of go for the league, regroup, and like Galway and Kilkenny are going to get through Leinster regardless, you'd imagine. So they can kind of build it up the whole way through.
And Galway are against Carlow in their first game. So for the same reason, I'm sure they'd be happy enough to get to a league final. Whereas Wexford are playing Dublin. I think ideally, if they were to bow out around the semi-final stages on March 23, 24, that weekend, they probably wouldn't mind too much. PWell74 says, what will any team learn from throwing a young player in against another young player during the league? Team needs to put out strong teams against each other to test new players.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, my reasoning on that would be, I always think if you're giving a fella a chance, just say Fergal O'Connor's getting a chance in the league for Limerick. I think it's only fair on him to see what he's actually like if Dan Morrissey is beside him on one side, Declan Hannon is in front of Dan, and Dermot Burns is beside him. I think that's a realistic gauge of where he's actually at. If you put kind of a load of inexperienced players in there together, like put him into the structure of the team and see how he works with the more experienced faces, I think that's an accurate gauge of whether someone is up to it or not. I'd always have an issue with a lad getting a chance maybe at centre forward, would say, and there's 2 inexperienced wing forwards beside him and 2 inexperienced midfielders. It's not an accurate gauge of where they are.
Yeah, okay, we've a comment in from Dave Bryan here. Lads, not being biased, but Offaly need a good league. They're up against a wall with the stronger teams when we couldn't beat Carlow and the Joe McDonough. Need to be putting in good performances. And I'm gonna put you under the spotlight with Offaly in a little bit of time. But in terms of the managers with year 2, now, first off, I'm sure you'd agree Keith Rossiter deserves a nice grace period here as he takes over Wexford in the first year, especially where they're coming from after. It was a good response to losing to Westmeath, but it remains because they beat Kilkenny. But it remains to be seen. Is there any hangover from that at all? Maybe we'll ask Adrian Ronan about it too. But the managers that are into year 2, like, excuse time is over, isn't it?
Kind of is. You do get a bit of grace in your first year, barring like every result is bad. You get a chance to, you're kind of finding out what you have. and you're getting a kind of good look at new players and maybe new kind of systems of play and trying to bed things in. But once you're in that kind of second year, you should really know what you have. You should really know what way you're playing. Your players should know what way you're playing. If there's any physical deficit or conditioning deficit, that should be definitely up closer to where you want it to be. So, that's that. I don't think there are many excuses in year two. And do you know why there's no excuses in year two? Because if year one was only average and year two doesn't go well, to me, like, you're not seeing year three realistically. You have to see progress. Just on Keith Rossiter as well. As regards hangover from supporters and things like that, like, I know Carlow is a hell of a lot closer to Wexford than it is to Galway, but like, Wexford fans would have outnumbered them probably 10-1 the other day. And I know it's only a small thing, but just even seeing a big crowd of people around Lee Chin after, all Wexford people, and someone putting the Wexford sombrero on his head. It is only a Walsh Cup, but it's nice to see anyway, from what I could see, that the supporters are definitely, not to say that they were against them or anything like that, but they're definitely behind them now anyway. And I think the more positive the style of play Keith enforces, he actually made this point. He said that, as well as they went under Davy Fitz, it was quite a stringent system that he plays. And he said the same with Dar Egan. They were playing kind of quite systematically. He says, like, we'll definitely have a system in place, but I would like them to play with a lot more freedom. So the Wexford public, like, if you chat to Tom Dempsey or you chat to Billy Byrne or any of these lads, they do want at least two men inside most of the time. Do you know what I mean? And Wexford people seem to want that as well. So that seems to be a bit of I think Keith is very aware of that. And he's not going to play 15 on 15 or like that, because it's just not possible. But I do think he will try and play a bit more orthodox maybe than they have.
A Kilkenny supporter here driving the boot in 36 and counting. Wexford fans must be the biggest offenders for the hype machine. Surprised there wasn't a homecoming last weekend. That was after the Walsh Cup. A question here from Hurling 1234. Michael, you said your first game was with Offaly was against Cork. What were the initial nerves, feelings, etc.?
Yeah, we played. It was funny. We went down to Parky Queeve, and that's all I'll ever be calling it. I won't be calling it the other name. We went down there in 2007. John McIntyre was after calling myself and a good cohort of young lads in, and we probably had about 6-7 debutants. I think they had a decent few regulars. Don Logue was definitely in the goals. I think Sean Og, Ronan Curran, Ben O'Connor, and a few playing. It's funny. I think when you're younger, you don't think about things as much. I'm sure I was nervous, but I wouldn't have been definitely overthinking it at that age. It's when you get a bit older you start maybe overthinking things. I was on Kieran Hero Murphy, I think was corner forward that day. They beat us by 7 in the end, and I actually remember a lot of Offaly people, definitely a good few from Burr, had Cork backed -6 that day, and we're that's a fact. And we're willing us to be beaten by more than 6, which you're basically like willing your clubmates not to go well under debut, essentially, really. That's a fact. Like, that's the way of the world. But yeah, no, we went well, and most of the debutants went well. I don't really remember nerves that much. I think it's when you have a bad experience, I think then you start overthinking it and start getting real nervous and thinking too much about it.
We could have a long show about that, couldn't we?
Yeah, we'll have a good therapy session sometime.
Yeah. Do you know, as soon as you mentioned it was 2007 there, I was like, what was going on in the world in 2007? Ireland's cricket team celebrated World Cup victory over Pakistan. The Spice Girls got back together. Boyzone got back together. The iPhone was launched in the USA. Let's see, what else? Some of the songs on the 2007 playlist.
Go for it.
This is according to an RT article. Girls Aloud had Call the Shots. Don't remember that one. Razorlight had Before I Fall to Pieces. That was a good song.
Before I Fall to Pieces. And I fell to pieces not too long after.
Yeah, Duke Special, Freewheel. Timberland featuring One Republic, Apologize. Yeah, that was a massive hit at the time. Robin with Every Heartbeat. Mika with Grace Kelly. Fergie with Glamorous.
Yeah, great song.
Read My Mind from the Killers. That's good. Golden Scans from the Claxons, and About You Now from the Sugar Babes. That's a list on an RTE website for reeling in the ears. So, do you know, that wasn't today or yesterday.
No, it's funny though about that match. Like, I do remember a lot about it. we stopped in Finnegan's on the way down, even just to get grub. It was a totally new experience going playing a kind of a county game. But no, as regards nerves and that, wouldn't have thought about it too much, really. Yeah, wouldn't have thought about it too much. It was kind of cool though when you think about it, to be on the same pitch as the likes of some of those kind of great players that I did mention there.
Yeah, PWell74 says Wexford going well and winning the league would be the best result for Hurling and its promotion. They would create unreal hype. Richard Hogan is talking about introducing new players. The rule of thumb should be 2 experienced and 1 novice on each line if you're blood and players. And he also adds, the real question of the league is, when are Offaly back?
Oh, we could be waiting a while for Offaly to be back, I'd say now, to be honest with you.
Well, let's just ask you about it. Like, what should be the goal for Offaly this year, starting with Waterford this weekend?
Well, the Division 1A group probably isn't as bad as it has been before. And you're hoping you'd be somewhat competitive against Waterford and maybe somewhat competitive against Wexford, but it's gonna be tough. Realistically, you have the Joe McDonough final taken in isolation was a brilliant game and it was really competitive and we were very, very close to winning it, obviously, on a couple of occasions. But like the Tipperary game was an eye-opener in terrible conditions, probably to where Offaly actually are. It's probably, we're probably not that far behind. It's probably a lot of, that a 20-point defeat quickly turned into whatever, a 30-point defeat or more. But it was a bad way to finish the year. It's not a good way to go into 2024 either. It's obviously, a few new fellas in. Adam Screeney is in. Dan Ravenhill is in. I think he's injured at the minute though. But, it's going to take 3 or 4 years really before you integrate those minors and under 20s into a senior team and before they're really physically up to it. So I think it'd be realistic enough. I think it's going to be a tough league, to be honest with you. If we got any point on the board, that would be a massive bonus. But you'd have to say it's very unlikely at this stage.
And by the way, since you mentioned those under 20s, an awful lot of those who got to the final last year against Cork, they are of age again this year, aren't they?
Yeah, no, the vast majority would be, because the vast majority were minor when Tipp beat us in 2022. So there would be, and that's a juggling act there. And that's a juggling act. And I know, like, it's going to be a fair effort. You have to kind of try and get Adam Screeney up to it physically, but you have to kind of mind him as well. Like will he learn? Like, will you learn much really from marking a full-grown man in winter hurling at this stage? I'd be cute enough with what he's doing at the minute. I'd be getting a lot of conditioning work done with him. But as I said before, I would be kind of letting him enjoy his life a small bit as well. He's first year of college. He's playing freshers with UL. I think he's on scholarship down there as well. So hopefully he's available for plenty of their games and mix him with Offaly when he can. But I don't know if it's as much benefit to have him out in a big heavy pitch at the minute. Getting, he's going to get knocked about at this time of the year as well. I'd be kind of minding him more with the view to a summer, maybe springing him in games with 20 or 25 minutes to go come summertime when the ground hardens up.
We're going to bring Adrian Ronan in just a moment, but just in terms of Waterford, now we've seen in recent days reports that Caleb Lyons and Shane Bennett, they've returned from Australia. So that's obviously a boost. Stephen Bennett, we're not sure how his season is going to be because of the hip injury that we've heard about, which seems really bad for him. Austin Gleeson's obviously away. And are we going to see the same style of play, or are we going to see it change? Because broadly speaking, it didn't work last year.
No, I'd hope we'd see a change, and I imagine we will. The Tipperary game was, to me, it's what Waterford are capable of. They just played, they didn't abandon, the script or anything like that, but they just made sure to play 2 men inside. They have a couple of the most dangerous inside forwards in the country in Desi Hutchinson and, Patrick Fitzgerald, even Pádraig Fitzgerald can play in there as well. Michael Kiley as well. They have dangerous lads in around the goals, and I don't think it's any benefit for them to be out the pitch foraging. I think that's other lads' jobs. They have a couple of killers inside. Desi basically parked himself in around the 6-yard box against Tipperary last year, and he was just dangerous. And you could say maybe it was a foul on Rhys Shelley for the goal, but he was in around there causing a nuisance. And I think they need to play a bit more like that, play to their strengths, I would say as well. Yeah, no. So I would hope to see a bit of a tactical change from Waterford this year.
Okay, so great now that we have Adrian Ronan on the line. Adrian, how are things with you? Can you hear us? Oh, you're muted. You have yourself muted.
Sorry, A lot of people would like that generally. Yeah, sorry about that.
What's rare is wonderful, Adrian.
Yes, particularly referees.
How's life with you? Enjoying all the
Good.
Hurling as it kicks into gear again?
Yeah, looking forward to listening to all the experts, and we all having our own opinion, and so we all hoping and everyone else in the chasing pack trying to catch Limerick. So who's going to do it? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and like Kilkenny start this weekend against Wexford, and I was kind of messaging you about coming on the show, and I was saying first like proper test of Keith Rossiter against Derek-Lyng since that Leinster under-20 final a couple of years ago. Now you did mention that they played in the Walsh Cup recently, but I'm sure Rossiter would like to get one over.
Won't say what you text back about you thought of the Welsh Cup.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, was that what you said? Okay. Yeah, look, they have, again, we often mention it's the two boys against each other on the sideline, but as we often know, it's the players that make the difference, and it's the players that play when they cross the white line. The Welsh Cup, as you rightly said, Kilkenny had about 5 of their starting panel from the All-Ireland last year, and Seaman and Wexford we covered that game with KCLR, and Wexford had about 7 of the panel from the All-Ireland. So when you break it down, both teams had similar panels. They were trying out a number of players. But interestingly, Wexford were very good. Their first touch was excellent. Their movement off the ball, off the shoulder, and I think you'll see the influence of Jason Ryan in particular involved with Wexford. I think there's, as you know, Kilkenny and the big ball, we don't go down too well. But in Wexford, they seem to have a nice style. Rossiter has brought it only in the 2 games we've seen so far. There's a style to it, and I'd say Jason Ryan has a big influence on that.
Well, James, that's ironic, Adrian, considering a football man came in here and into Kilkenny and basically had you playing football tactics for the guts of a decade.
Who's that?
Mick Dempsey.
Oh, Mick Dempsey. Excuse me. Yes, excuse me. Of course. Yeah.
You were the originators.
We played a style of a different style. Well, of course we did. Yeah, it's changed as we all know. Well, as we all read, as I said, we're not into football tactics whatsoever. But Dempsey did a great job for sure. He's spreading the gospel elsewhere now. He's up in Tipperary, I think, as far as I know, but haven't seen him in a while. But yeah, look, Wexford definitely they seem to have a bit done. Their first touch, as I said, was excellent, and I was impressed with them, I have to say.
We were talking about whether there'd be any hangover from last year for Wexford. Like, they bounced back from the defeat to Westmeath by beating Kilkenny, but still, like, there's, they probably would have heard a nice bit in their ears about, losing to Westmeath, even though, Westmeath are a good team, but they're not expected to be beating Wexford. Yeah,
and again, listening to the vibes, they were 17 points up against Westmeath that day, which was amazing. The damage was done against Clare. I think they let in 6 goals against Clare, and that was the damage when the damage was done. But they had a horrific week, listening to the players and listening to the interviews and listening to the supporters. They had a horrific week that week leading into the match. And we again covered it down in Chadwick's Wexford Park. And it was like an All-Ireland. It was amazing. And then, of course, they won by that point. And they got out of jail. And thankfully, for Hurling's sake, for Wexford's sake, they're still in the Leinster Championship. They're not in the Joe McDonagh. So look, I think the hangover might be over to have one of their own, Keith Rossiter back, and they have a decent under-21 team the last couple of years. They've given Kilkenny plenty of it in under-21 the last couple of years. And again, as I said, I was impressed with some of their players. Now look, next Sunday is going to be a different test, because I expect Kilkenny, for the first time in a long time, will have certainly the Ballyhale contingent back. So that means we'll be stronger nationally. During the league, the last couple of years, we went out without the Ballyhale lads, and we were always saying there'll be 5 or 6 of them back. We'll have 3 or 4 of them for sure. Richie Reid got married. I doubt he's back just yet. He got married over Christmas. So we'll be stronger, and I suspect, even though a lot of people don't think it, that there'll be none of the O'Loughlin's lads, but I think he'll do a good job trying to stop Paddy Deegan and Hughie Lawler playing in the league. So I expect we'll be stronger. We'll be a stronger league outfit than other years.
And Richard Hogan asked, who's caught your eye from Kilkenny so far this year?
Well, it's very, very early, but I've mentioned a few times, it's very early so far, because again, I'm a big believer, and I heard Mikey saying it there, of the hard ground and the soft ground, the summertime hurler and the wintertime hurler. So I think it's very difficult. I think there's 2 different players at all levels. The player that likes the hard ground and the player that might prefer the soft ground, if there's such a thing. For me, I'm a big fan of Kevin Blanchfield. Now, he's not David, nor is he Liam. He's the older brother. He's 27 years of age. Had a fabulous year with his club. Has an engine on him. Doesn't know when to go back. Has declined going to Australia when he had every chance to go to Australia. So I have a big interest in him because I think he'll bring something to Kilkenny if all goes well for him. I think he has pace, size, speed, and we need something out in the middle of the field, maybe in Kilkenny. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. Now, on top of all that, we have all the other regulars, the under-21s that have been hanging at the back end of the panel. None of them have really got a chance. And I said, we've only had one appearance this year and then the Welsh Cup, and I'd say most lads that day will want to forget about it. So, look, for me, it's the one I'm watching is, in particular, is Kevin Blanchfield.
Michael?
Yeah, Adrian, where are Kilkenny in the pecking order going into this year? You could say that, you know, Derek maybe carried the momentum of the previous year where they were only beaten by 2 in the All-Ireland final and Brian Cody's reign, but he kind of needs to nail down things himself now. Have you seen a distinct kind of way that they're going to play maybe as opposed to the previous regime, and where do you think they are kind of heading into this year?
Well, I suppose, as you know, Mike, the record book says we're the second best team in the country, but that's not. I don't think that's fair. I think we're in the pack with everyone else. We're in a decent position now. We've lost Richie Hogan and Pádraig Welsh. They're a serious loss off the group, off their panel for their experience alone. We are trying, most certainly, in the last few games, and particularly in the Welsh Cup, whether we persist with playing a short game, we persisted with a short game. We haven't perfected it. I'm not too sure who has perfected it, but that's a big change for Kilkenny, that we're trying to mix it up. Now, we've done that in the last couple of years in the league, and then we went back to our old style in Championship. And then when we needed it most, we never reverted back. Derek Lyng needs to find, as you said, 1 or 2 or 3 players for the team, and needs to find maybe 4 or 5 onto the panel. We need to have that panel of 25 or 26 that you can trust. He'll need to find 2 or 3 players. I suspect he needs to find another back, a midfielder and a forward. The transfer deadline today is in the Premiership, isn't it? So I don't know, can we buy anyone? So, yeah, we do. But certainly, like, he has a very good backroom team with him. There's very good lads involved and very solid, knowledgeable people involved with Derek. So this, as you rightly said, see, we're of the opinion down here when we're right or wrong, and ye have great mileage out of it, I suppose. The Leinster Championship versus the Munster Championship. We failed in the last 2 years in an All-Ireland final against Limerick. And just curious, are we better off going the other route? Could you catch Limerick in a Munster Championship? Some of the teams will try. Or could you catch them in an All-Ireland semi-final? So, and I think Galway in particular need a big performance, and I think Galway will need to win a Leinster final. So I don't think we'll get upset. We're going for 4 in a row in Leinster, and we're supposed to be going poorly, so we're not that poor if we're going for 4 in a row in Leinster. But of course, the Tipp man doesn't think much of the Leinster Championship. He's smiling there.
Is it 5 in a row, actually?
Could be actually 5. It could be actually 5.
They're also right. Going for 5 in a row All-Ireland final losses.
Well, we've never lost 3 in a row in the history of the GA. So if we're in one, we don't suspect to lose the one this year if we're in one. But no. But thanks again from the Tipperary viewpoint. Yeah, it's nice and encouraging.
Well, no county has lost more All-Ireland finals than Kilkenny, to be fair to you, so credit where it's due.
We've also won 36, so come on now, back off.
Adrian, can I ask Adrian? I appreciate this is a bit of a sticky wicket, but you said it last year on the show, like that Kilkenny's best chance of winning All Ireland is while TJ Reid is on the pitch. Like would you worry when he steps away that there's going to be, you know, that the famine could go on for a long time, a hell of a lot longer, like double the time it is now, if you don't win one while he's around?
Well, it's a concern for sure, because as we all know, in Kilkenny in particular, he's up there with the best. He's 36 years of age this year. But look, to be fair, Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, they're starting to mould into leaders now. So look, TJ, when he was their age, and if you think back on it, he was a bit player, which is amazing to think that under Brian Cody's regime, he was subbed in many a game, didn't start in 1 or 2 of the All-Ireland. So when TJ was the boy's age, you know, he wasn't lording or wasn't exceeding like he is now. So look, we'd have great faith in Cody and Mullen now as leaders up front. Are they at this stage the TJ Reid? Not yet, but when they were TJ's age, when TJ was their age, he was in the shadows of the DJs and the Henrys and the like. So it's a concern because he's so good and he's been so influential. Yeah.
You mentioned Mullen there. I put up what I thought was my Kilkenny team, and say for 2024. There on, you know, Twitter or X or whatever it's called there before Christmas. And I'd left Richie Reid at 6. Do you think there's a move to put do you ever think there's a possibility of Adrian Mullen playing 6? Is there anyone else that would play 6? Could Hugh Lawler go out to 6, or will they leave it as is?
I'd say that there's concern as regards maybe changing them, because we've went, as I said, the last 2 All-Irelands with a similar style, a similar structure, and it hasn't worked. So we have to tweak it in some shape or form. Now, what that tweaking means, I'm not too sure. Like, you must remember, we fancy Mikey Carey and David Blanchfield coming back into the team. They didn't play last year's Ireland, so they're a serious outfit. They can play wing back. They're big men. If you play now, we were nervous talking about playing Limerick. We might never get to play Limerick because we might get through the league and we might play them in championship. But having David Blanchfield and having Mikey Carey coming back into the group, Mullen, and I know him for a long time underage, he often played centre-back with his club underage and was transferred up to the forward. He'd be a brilliant centre-back for sure and would have no difficulty playing there. And Richie Reid can play, as we say, it's 5, 7, 8 or 9. Now, I think maybe Kilkenny might look at Richie Reid going at 8 or 9 and going back to that style that you mentioned, that football style of maybe having a holding midfielder. We did change our style in the last few years. We have to tweak it, we have to change it. And maybe Richie Reid might go back in as a defending 8 or 9 and find a centre-back. I don't think we'll ever move Hughie Lawler out of 3. That I don't think can happen.
I would see Adrian Mullen as one of the best forwards in the country, and I can see the appeal of putting him at 6, but I just don't think you could do it. Like the likes then of Tom Phelan, will say, who had a very good All-Ireland last year. Did he score 3 points maybe? Like, he was really good. Like Billy Ryan from your own club, Greg Ballycallan. Like, are there other lads that you expect to push for a starting spot and sort of bolster that forward line, Adrian?
Well, yeah, there is, and again, it all depends how these under-20s go. Like, there's plenty of talk about the likes of Garrow Dunn and Harry Shine, to name 2, Timmy Clifford. Again, there's a lot of guys, and I mentioned this before, and this is no disrespect to the young lads. We have a lot of players that are similar style and stature. Have we someone with an X factor? Just maybe not just yet. So the league is hugely important to find that forward that has the X factor. There's rumours of some of the Kilkenny forwards of the last 2 years being under a particular degree of pressure. Well, if they are, the younger lads need to pass them out, and they haven't done so in the last 6 months. They haven't done so in the championship. Stephen Donnelly is another man from Thomastown. He's going to get every opportunity. But I still think it's going to have to come from some of the under-21s, under-20s. But for that to happen, they have to have a good under-20 championship. If you're looking for a dark horse, for me, if he gets his chance, it's probably Harry Shine and maybe Garrow Dunn, but there's a lot of work for those guys in the winter. And both of them are injured presently at the minute. But again, we don't need that major tweaking. I think if you bring back Blanchfield and you bring back Mikey Carey, that bolsters up, the positions up the field. And then I know people don't like going back to the older players, but we still, Fogarty and Killian Buckley, let them be the wrong side of 30. But they had 2 big major plays in last year's championship, Fogarty's hook and Buckley's goal. So I don't think that we're in a rush to let them off either.
If you're good enough, you're young enough, Adrian.
So they say.
Yeah, that's it. But outside of Kilkenny and Limerick, who do you see as the main runners and riders this year? Who's in the chasing pack?
Well, sure. Everyone in Munster's in the chasing pack.
Agreed.
Agreed, yeah. I knew you'd like that one. So whoever comes out of Munster, but look, there has to be a big kick in Galway, and sure, look, in Leinster, as we all know, it's possibly a 1-2, Kilkenny and Galway, and then, as we know, it's Wexford, Dublin, and whoever else wants to join that party. But in the chasing pack, how long are we talking about Clare? But Clare have stumbled. I'm a big fan of Clare, and they've stumbled each time against Kilkenny, and it's disappointing. Where's Tony Kelly going to be after he comes back from injury? It's a worry. The Cork fraternity, we're a long time listening to Cork coming back into it. Like, when is it going to happen? Davy and Waterford is a big kicking. For me, look, I'm a big fan, and I hate saying it, I'm a big fan of Tipperary and a big fan of Liam Cahill. And I know you're going to play them down, but I think Cahill...
He will not play them down. He'll build them up to the moon.
Okay, well, that maybe... Okay, then. Well, look, I'm going to agree. I have a big interest in Tipperary. The fact that I have 2 grandmothers from Tipperary and I live near the border, I suppose, and I do a bit of business in Tipperary makes my decision a little bit easier. So I think there's a big bounce in Tipp, but it's obviously it's a dangerous minefield down in Munster, because any of the 5 teams, as we know, can come out of it, and depending on injuries and depending on refereeing decisions, anything can happen in Munster.
What players, like, of the top players that we have at the moment, like, who do you really enjoy watching, Adrian?
Well, sure, I suppose I'm a Tony Kelly fan at all times. I suppose when you talk about Hurling, Conor Whelan, you know what I mean? But as you can see from what you're looking at, and Mikey Verney's the same, I like the small man now, I have to say. The day of the big man gets all the credit in this day and age. But look, when you look at Limerick, you can't run, you can't go past Paddy to Limerick, Gillan, of course, and the likes of, but look, wearing my Kilkenny hat, as I said, I'm a big, naturally a TJ Reid fan, but look, I just think the smaller man is becoming extinct, and I worry about the smaller man becoming extinct. Strangely, and I mentioned this on the radio the other day, and I don't know that Michael or someone picked up on it, someone else picked up on it as well in the media. Wexford, the last day, outside of Jack O'Connor, were all similar stature as in small men. I was surprised with that because Wexford often came with big, strong men. And I just wonder, are they trying to play a different style? I was actually thrilled in a way that I saw a lot of small men doing well. So, yeah, look, when you talk about great hurlers, like TJ Reid, obviously, Gillan and the likes of, but look, I'm a big Tony Kelly fan.
And just on that point, actually, Adrian, outside of Lee Chin, Jack O'Connor, I'd say the rest of them were under 6 foot. Corey Byrne Dunbar, Richie Lawler, Keane Byrne, Conor Foley, Conor Hearn. Yeah, they definitely. Listen, it's probably a needs must at the minute because Matt O'Hanlon's out, Liam Ryan is out, Liam McGovern is out, Dee O'Keefe is out, Conor McDonald is out, and a couple more. But maybe they're looking to play a more mobile style. One I wanted to put to you as well, Adrian, and you played in the goals a bit back in the day as well. There could be a Kilkenny man playing in goals for Wexford on Sunday.
Yeah, and would you believe I had him when I was minor manager in Kilkenny? He was the sub-goalie and goalies the odd day. Aaron Duggan played with Dixborough, and as we know, Dixborough are a city team and a huge club with huge numbers, hence the move. He didn't get into the Borough goal because, as I said, they have 3 and 4 for every position in the Borough club, and he moved on to Wexford. Great young lad, lovely fellow. He's not a young lad anymore. He's probably 27 or 8. Will he start Sunday? He didn't start in Callan when he had started the previous day against Carlow. I was surprised he didn't see him start, but I had him minor and for 2 years. Lovely fella and a good goalie, yeah, very good goalie. So it'll be interesting because, as we said, it looks like Mark Fanning is gone from the Wexford setup. He was back in. He was involved in a Walsh Cup game. Definitely was back in, unless he's gone since. He definitely was back in. Okay, I was listening to the Wexford fraternity and they mentioned that he may be gone, but I missed that. But yeah, young Duggan, yeah, he's a Kilkenny man, ex-Dixborough man, and good young lad. Haven't seen him playing on goal for a while. It's 10 years ago since I had him as minor, but if he has all the qualities of a good goalie, yeah.
Who else did you have actually when you were a minor manager, and anyone go on to have a particularly strong career?
Well, if you're in a pub talking, I inherited a strange bunch. I had Richie Reid, would you believe? Conor Ford. I had a guy called Kevin Kelly who was a brilliant underage hurler.
Remember him?
I had a guy.
He scored a goal. He scored a goal in the 16 final, was it?
Yeah. Great young lad. He was coming with huge potential. Just injury caught up with him. I had James Marr and I had Liam Blanchfield for a while, but not many more. And someone will kill me after this now and say, "Oh, you forgot somebody," but. They were the main guys that had a better backroom team, I think, at the time. I had Tom Mullally, I had Niall Lacey, Shawnee Kelly, all lads that have done great work with counties. And so I had a great backroom team, and we didn't have any luck. We actually often said this to you. I think I said this the last day, Shane. We came across that great Dublin team, which was, when you say a great Dublin team, great Dublin minor hurling team, where Kieran Kilkenny, Cormac Costello, Lowndes, Emmett Carroll.
Johnny Cooper was involved with them as well, I think, wasn't he? Or was he?
I don't think he. But
Colin
they had 4.
Ebbet O'Connell, I think.
Ebbet O'Connell, that's the guy I was thinking of, yeah. They had 4 or 5 who turned out to be brilliant footballers, who were brilliant hurlers. And of course, when did they arrive? The same time as I'm over the Kilkenny Miners.
and Adrian, you mentioned Tom Mullally there. Carlow will start against Kerry this weekend away from home. Can you just talk to us about what he brings to a team, because his success seems to have followed him everywhere he's gone,
except with your team, Adrian.
Yeah.
Sorry,
he learned how to fail with me. He's gone on to great things since then. But no, Tom was involved. Tom, as I said, with minor, and he was he was kind of ahead of his time in the Brian Cody era and was in the background there, very astute on the club scene, Mount Leinster Rangers, as we know, down in Wexford, and did a lot of great work and just never got the opportunity within Kilkenny GA squads or circles or underage teams and went outside the county, and as we know has been proven very successful. One, he's a Mullally, two, he's from Glenmore, which means he's steeped in hurling, steeped in history, is great, gets great advice from all the Glenmore lads. As we know, anyone knows Glenmore, they know all about hurling down in Glenmore and they're well advised. Eddie O'Connor will be on to me straight away. So like Tom brings what Tom has is a very good understanding and a deep knowledge of it. I think he studies it very much and very tactically in use. And as we said, strangely has never kind of got the opportunity or the chance within Kilkenny hurling circles. Now he's with Clara for a while, but well respected in Kilkenny and obviously well respected everywhere he goes.
Adrian, is Kilkenny a bit like Kerry, where if you go out of the system, it's very, very hard to get back into the system? I remember chatting the late great Liam Curran, Shane, we were chatting him on this show, and we kind of asked him, would he ever have any interest in the Kerry job? And he said he'd love to be Kerry manager, but once you go out of the system and go manage elsewhere, you're kind of really not really in consideration. And Tom seems to be the same. His name doesn't really crop up for, say, 20 jobs, or even when the senior job was going after Brian, his name doesn't crop up. Is that a case where you go out of the system and you're kind of, I don't know, not forgotten about, but you have to kind of stay within the system to be considered for these jobs?
Well, I suppose, to be fair, I can only talk about Kilkenny. So first and foremost, there's a generation of hurlers missed out in Kilkenny because Brian Cody was there for 100 years. So there's a generation of ex-hurlers missed out. And if you look back in the Kilkenny history of training teams, and this is not a sly on Kilkenny team management, but Tom didn't and wouldn't have a decorated CV when it comes to winning All-Ireland medals. And that seems to be part of the brief when you're involved in Kilkenny. If you look at the history of Kilkenny, great managers over the last number of years, you know what I mean? Now you're going to pull on me now, I suppose, Michael, and say, such and such a lad didn't. But in general, you go Pat Henderson, Brian Cody, all hurled and had a decorated CV. So Tom mightn't have had a decorated CV. And he was in the mix and he was mentioned, to be fair, when Brian Cody was gone. But as we often know, to be in the right place at the right time is hugely important. And as I said, didn't get the opportunity. But look, he's done so well with Carlo, does so well with Nace. And again, as I said, well respected, but it's a difficult challenge from this year, of course, up in the Joe McDonough. So Adrian, Joe McDonough, let's jump to.
So Adrian, like this weekend, Limerick will begin their league, and I suppose, look, let's talk about it. The drive for 5, against Antrim. Obviously, it's just the league, but can you tell us, like being inside Kilkenny, when you were going for the drive for 5? Obviously, you weren't part of the setup or anything, but like, what's it like? Yeah, what's it like within the county? This is a chance to be, on their own now as the greatest team of all time. But what will they be facing into in terms of for the year to come? Will this just be the talk on everyone's lips within the county?
Well, sure, look, they've demonstrated over the last 5 years that they're very united and protected group. Like, there doesn't seem to be much leaking out of them. So that's obviously a huge plus for the likes of Limerick. Now, as we all know, they have their issues. So that's how that's going to happen, how that's going to be dealt with during the year. But outside of the off-the-field issues, hurling-wise, of course, look, at this stage, they are the team to beat. No different from Kilkenny, but it's so difficult because, as we know, everyone's after, or everyone has your targeted. And look what happened last year, it was so close last year they could have got caught. So, when you think of it, last year, and yet they went on to be the 4 in a row, won the league comfortably. Won the championship in the end comfortably when they got out of Munster. So, look, again, they're finished in Munster. They'll be a wounded animal, so they could be caught by maybe a fresher Kilkenny, a fresher Galway, or a fresher other team when they come out of it. Because, as you often remind us, it is a minefield in Munster, and you are a wounded animal coming out of it at times. So, look, that's a danger for them. But look, to have all the material, as I said, in Kilkenny over those last few years, there was that great rivalry with Tipperary, and of course that was obviously, being so close to the border, as that drove on the rivalry, and the end, that was a great team, great Tipp team. You think of it, there's a lot of great Tipp hurlers didn't get more All-Irelands over it. It just happened to meet their best team presently of all time in Kilkenny. So they came at a difficult time, whereas in this time, I suppose there's a number of teams, I believe, have an opportunity to break Limerick, you know what I mean? Because there's so many of us that there's not an outstanding second team, I don't think, to target Limerick.
Just on a couple of points Adrian has made there, Shane, that's a big thing to do with the 5 in a row. Who's the, when Kilkenny landed the 4 in a row, Tipp were unbelievably close and had ran them for 65 minutes or so. And you probably knew the Tipp were going to progress the next year and be a better animal from having lost that game. That team isn't really there now. There's no one, I suppose you'd say maybe Clare are pushing Limerick to the pin of their collar, but they're really struggling when they get outside of Munster. And then you look at, in 2010, Henry did the cruciate, John Tennyson did, had his injury as well. Like, Limerick have had their fill of that already. They lost Cian Lynch a week before an All-Ireland final. They lost Declan Hannon last year. They lost Sean Finn last year. And they were still able to overcome all those injuries. The circus that was around Kilkenny in 2010 will not be around Limerick in 2024. No way. They're too well guarded around it. So, like, I don't know. To me, it's if Limerick are to be beaten in 2024, it's going to be a lot to do with their own hunger and their own drive, and whether that same drive that's been there in recent years is there. There's no reason to suggest it wouldn't be, but you just don't know. As regards things that could slip up, like, they've had everything that could possibly slip them up to this point, and they haven't slipped up. It's amazing, really, and particularly coming from a county that's not decorated with All-Irelands, and a county that they will admit themselves they get excited, like maybe say a Wexford would, and they've still managed to keep the train on tracks. It's been remarkable, really. So to me, if you're looking at what's going to stop Limerick in 2024, it's themselves, really. And I mean, that's like, they've overcome, didn't have 14 men when they were finishing against Waterford last year. They still won. They've had all these injuries and have everything thrown at them, and they've still managed to come out the other side of it. So it's just, do they still have that same insatiable hunger and, thirst for work as they did other years? And you'd imagine with 5 in a row hanging in the background that they would.
Yeah, I agree, Michael. I think they do. I think the hunger won't be the issue, or the passion won't be the issue. It'll be how good the other teams can react. Is there, are Clare, after improving on last year, are Cork finally going to come? If you look at Munster, have the challengers weakened or have they got stronger? I'm not too sure based on what we've seen so far. It's hard to know, but just to mark the point about the crowds coming, like, it's a lot easier to get into Nolan Park 10 years ago than it is to Adair Manor. You know what I mean? So these guys are well protected. Like, you know what I mean? They're, and that's the one thing that there's huge similarities between that great team of the Kilkennys of the noughties. Most of them, like, these guys are well grounded. But to be fair to the Limerick and Kilkenny team of the noughties, they're just, they're well-grounded individuals, every one of them, most of them, and a lot of is kept inside. There's seldom stories coming out of the group. That great Kilkenny team, you'd never hear anything of that group. It was very tight. They seldom went astray. And, Limerick, to be fair to them, in most cases are similar.
But sure, listen, Adrian, the first time we knew that Will O'Donoghue was playing centre-back in the All-Ireland semi-final was when he went out to do the warm-up in his triangle with the half-back line. Like, that is absolute gold for a manager, isn't it? Like, that is what you want in a setup. No leaks, everybody on the same page, because that festers into a squad and becomes really, really dangerous within a squad. But even though there's lads not playing, lads are obviously still happy and they're all singing off the one hymn sheet, which is a great thing.
Well, possibly there's the similarities with Brian Cody and Kiley, because trying to keep that group happy and that spirit within the group, he seems to be, because you look at the Limerick subs, the O'Neills, the Coughlin's and the Lobb, like, they're only bit players for the last 3 and 4 years, and yet he's keeping them hungry, keeping them interested, and he's had maybe 15 different players playing in the last few weeks. So keeping that unit and that spirit there is commendable, to be fair to Kiley. That's obviously a huge trait, keeping the camp happy.
A final thing, Adrian, have you bumped into Brian Cody much since he stepped away from the inter-county job? And he's obviously back in with James Stephens, so he can't stay away from it. Yeah,
well, other than Brian is keeping a low profile in that regard, but he was involved with James Stephens the last 2 years, and he took it over entirely last year. I know he's making another big drive this year, so he hasn't lost the hunger or the passion. Is he in his familiar spot during the league matches? I'm not too sure. We'll see on Sunday. Will he return? His wife Elsie's a Wexford lady, so I'm sure he often goes to Kilkenny Wexford matches. But no, he still has the same hunger and desire and interest, but keeping a low profile. You don't hear him on the local media much. He's kind of gone underground, to be fair to him. He's letting Derek Lyng, run the show. It's not like Alex Ferguson sitting above in the stand watching Ten Hag every day. Like, he's not sitting up in a box. He keeps a low profile when he's in Nolan Park. Goes off to the side and has his chat, and himself and Fan Larkin there are often together. And they run the roost. But no, he's kept a low profile from what I can see, and that's the form of the man. As we know, as a manager, he kept a low profile as well. Often kept in the people in the dark, and a lot of the players in the dark even.
Actually, 36 and counting says you should get Eddie O'Connor on the show. Viewership would hit an all-time record. What do you think? What would we be expecting from him if we ever get him on?
There's no Wi-Fi in Glenmore, so I don't think you get him. I don't know.
I think if we put Eddie, Christy Heffernan, who was on the show last year and was absolute gold, and Fan Larkin together on a pod, I'd say we do pretty well.
Yeah, and throw in Willie, you'd have a fair squad there, and they wouldn't be mincing their words, that's for sure.
A quick one for you, Adrian. James Morrissey just dropped me a message there. He said, I have Adrian's sub-goalkeeper jersey from 1991 Leinster semi-final. Michael Walsh got his nose broken. DJ ran 12 steps. Do you remember that? You do?
I do, of course. And then Eamon Simmet drove me into the back of the net with a box. I was waiting for a 65. Yeah, 1991. Mickey Welch got injured that day. Yeah, I was the sub-goalie. And that time, and you know it, boys, the record code, you know, their kit man. The record was a sub goalie in training for 10 years. So when we hurled in training, record stood in 1 goal because I was I was playing out the field, thankfully for the 10 years, so we had no sub goalie, and the record used to play on the goal. He was the kit man, so he was the sub goalie at the other end, and you see, and the record is still there, but I'm gone, so he lasted.
Well, look, Adrian, thanks very much for joining us. I'll see you in the press box soon.
Yeah, good lads. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Adrian. Good man.
Bye-bye.
Okay, great having Adrian on there. We'll definitely be chatting a little bit more hurling in a while, but delighted to say we've got Kyle Coney on the line, former Tyrone footballer. Kyle, how are things with you?
All good, lads. All good. Apologise. I thought I would have got stopped in a quieter place, but it's the apple green in the car for me at the minute.
Hey, that'll do just nicely. In terms of like the football this year, I mean, we're going to come to Derry and Tyrone shortly, but like we saw the first round of the league, 8 wins for Ulster teams, and Fermanagh nearly made it 9, finished a draw. Like, is there going to be an Ulster revolution this year? It's just going to be a takeover.
Yeah, I was at the Fermanagh game, Fermanagh Meath game. It wasn't from the games that we've seen on RTE and TG4. This one was a bit less exciting now, to say the least. But Fermanagh could have snuck something definitely out of the game. It was they had a couple of opportunities near the end, and it would have rounded off a great weekend for Ulster teams. But I seen Eamon Fitzmaurice said that the McKenna Cup, leads into good preparation for Ulster teams at the start of the league because they take it so serious, and that's probably right till a certain degree. Mickey Harte would have put a huge emphasis on it, and getting 4 games at least, and it's probably right in one sense of the matter, because nothing better than games at that time of year to try new things and to try new fellas. So a great start for Ulster teams, definitely. Long may it continue.
And then look, we have to jump to it this weekend. Tyrone again are obviously going up to visit Derry. Mickey Harte is going to be hosting, plenty of players that he's had in the past, and obviously, this game kind of sells itself. Kyle, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, there's going to be a huge number of spectators there, and anyone who's not going to be able to make it will be tuning in, I'm sure. Like myself, it has a huge interest probably throughout the whole country in general. Everyone's going to want to see it, just to see what sort of reception Mickey gets and what sort of embrace that we don't know. It's unknown. It's like I seen someone saying it was like Sir Alex Ferguson going to manage Man City or Liverpool, and look, that's what it feels like from a Tyrone point of view. It feels wrong on many levels, but Mickey sees an opportunity to win in All Ireland. I think with Derry being in the top 4 teams in the country, he has took that opportunity. I think that he realised, no disrespect to Louth, that he wasn't going to, he improved them massively. The players in Louth, have stood up again last weekend and said to themselves, we're not going to let this be something that Mickey Harte's going to do. We're going to drive it on themselves. But he's seen an opportunity and he's took it with both hands.
Do you think, Kyle, he obviously, there was talk for a couple of years before Mickey left or finished with Tyrone that maybe a change was needed or whatever. Do you think it's only fair in a way that he's gone somewhere where he thinks he can win in Ireland, albeit to one of your biggest rivals? Or are people in Tyrone still find it very, very difficult to grasp that he's somewhere else.
Well, I suppose you can't have your cake and eat it. Do you know what I mean? As I would have been involved in and around the time, I rejoined the panel in and around that time, and I think it might have been from like 2000 and correct me if I'm wrong, 2014 might have been the talk of whenever Tyrone beat a big top four. I think it was a Kerry, Mayo, or Dublin. There was the talk of when they beat them in the championship. Hadn't materialised. We won an Ulster title or two, got to an All-Ireland final in 2018 then. So people were wanting the change, and now Mickey has went. And obviously has taken Louth in the meantime then on to Derry. But I think it's probably the Tyrone-Derry rivalry that is annoying people. But I think also that Mickey being involved with Louth, and then this one come out of the woodwork so suddenly. It wasn't banished. I'm not sure if you heard Conor Glass speaking within the last couple of days that he said that, there was James Horn was mentioned, Jim Gavin was mentioned, obviously Malachy O'Rourke had the conversation. So, Mickey was in that list of people where he was approached. Nobody will ever know, but it happened so suddenly, and that's, he was in, there was wheels in motion with Louth for another year, and then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere, and that's probably where the surprise comes from as well.
Yeah, just on you mentioned the rivalry. Just talk to me about how, I don't know if bitter is the right word to use. Talk to me about the rivalry between Tyrone and Derry down through the years.
Look, growing up, it was actually whenever I came into the panel in 2000, way back in 2009, 2010, that was my very first league game, and it was in Celtic Park as well. So that was a baptism of fire. You can at that time, without the managerial controversy, you're probably talking at least 9,000 people alone. At a league game, the rivalry is huge because where I'm from, in Tyrone, the village of Arbo, it runs right into the village of Ballinderry, Gareth McKinless's club. So the likes of Ballinderry and ourselves would have played each other, over the course of the years and friendly games and stuff like that. And the parishes would run right into each other in that aspect. So there's a huge rivalry. And then obviously going up through the years with Tyrone and Derry, Derry winning the All-Ireland in 93 and having hugely successful teams throughout that period of time, and then Tyrone coming along and that winning the 3 All-Irelands in the clips, Derry, do you know what I mean? So that probably leaves them with the wee chip on their shoulder, and it adds fuel to the fire. It's going to be a great occasion on Sunday. I'm looking forward to seeing all the aspects that unfold.
It's funny because you're so geographically close. There are lots of other ties that kind of bind you. Conor Glass got engaged the other day. His future brother-in-law, Shawnee O'Donnell, is on the Tyrone panel. Shane McGuigan is going out with Peter Canavan's daughter Claire, and he's obviously going to be coming up against Rory and Dara. Like it's a kind of like you're very, very close in that respect. Yeah,
look, and a lot of these lads know each other through colleges football as well. There's interconnections all along that way. It's fascinating to see. I didn't know the connection with Shane McGuigan till I listened to the podcast as well. So that adds an extra wee bit of space to it as well. And then, it's I suppose Conor Glass with a Tyrone connection as well, and Shawnee O'Donnell, his future brother-in-law, that adds a wee bit of space to it as well. So it's Gareth McKinless will be right on the Tyrone border as well. His father managed my club. Would have been a hugely successful manager as well. So these lads know each other very, very well, and you'll have no doubt, and I can assure you, I was speaking to a few of the Tyrone players during the week. I'll still speak to one or two of them that they'll want to get the revenge over Derry, and then with Mickey Harte being there, they'll want to get one over on him as well.
Would it be fair to say, Kyle, that Derry look like a team that are closer to winning All-Ireland than Tyrone, who of course only won one a couple of years ago?
Absolutely. That like anyone who's looking at the thing logically will see that Derry were a kick of a ball from beating Kerry last year, and I think it was the 63rd minute, if I'm right in thinking. It sort of went to the pot a wee bit for them. They had a couple of kickouts. They lost one. They kicked one over the sideline, and the pressure come on. They folded a wee bit in that aspect, but there wasn't much in them. When you look at the Tyrone point of view, we've been off the boil from we won the All-Ireland. We've had a serious hangover in that regard, and that comes back to I spoke to a few people. The mentality thing coming out of the pack and hunting teams down. Tyrone are a great team whenever their backs against the wall. There's no other option. We look at the record throughout the backdoor system when we had it. There was no other option, only win games, but a hugely successful record in that. But Derry are definitely closer at this moment in time to winning the All-Ireland. Derry are probably in the top 2 teams in the country at the moment. Yes, we can add Kerry and Dublin in the top 3. When you take out the last year's All-Ireland finalists.
Just quickly, Kyle, is it hard we were talking about Tyrone winning the All-Ireland 2 years ago, and we're talking about them being, a bit away now. Can you put your finger on what's kind of gone wrong the last couple of years, and does that look like been put right this year? Or it's because from an outsider looking in, it's very hard to see how you get to the highest highs in 2021, and then the Kerry performance last year in the quarter-final would have been very disappointing. 2022 was very disappointing as well. Locally, is it are you any closer to putting your finger on it than we are?
No, not really. I think we, as I say, that mentality thing. Obviously, the target goes on your back when you win the All-Ireland, and teams can handle it. Dublin can handle it. Kerry can handle it, and we've seen down to the years that Tyrone have struggled the following year or the following years after winning the All-Ireland, where just struggled to get back to those heights. But I was a bit nervous going into the Roscommon game last week. It's been a long time since we've seen 6 debutants on a Tyrone team without the likes of yes, we have Matty Donnelly or Peter Harte and Niall Morgan and Paddy Hampsey and a few other lads. Michael McKiernan was there, but we haven't seen that team like that with 6 sort of new debutants that haven't really played an awful lot of senior football. But that was hugely encouraging at the weekend. Kieran Daly kicked 3 points from play. Ben Cullen kicked a point from play. And don't forget, this week, Darren McCurry has to come back into the fold. I don't know if the management find room to start him, but I think it's imperative that they get him into that team wherever they may be, that they need him in that team come the weekend for another scoring threat. If we have Darragh Canavan chipping in with 5 or 6, and you have Darren McCurry with on the free kicks on the other side and whatever he can get from play, that if you have the 2 of them in form, you go a long way winning the game.
And is Darragh Canavan sort of setting himself up now as the leading player? It was to lead the team 14 men against Roscommon to victory the way he did was, that was a brilliant performance.
Yeah, hugely impressive, and impressive last night also in the seeing some of the Sigerson, kick 3 points as well. So we've always known that Darragh has a huge talent. What I like about Darragh is that he can mix it up a wee bit. You can see after one of the scores against Roscommon, he come out and he was given a wee bit of guff off the ball. He's well able to mix it up, and he can give, as well as he can take, because he does take a lot of abuse on the field. He's not the biggest player in stature, so I wouldn't say that he's directly the lead man. Darren McCurry's been the chief score getter for Tyrone for the last number of years. The management, the year they won the All-Ireland, put a huge faith in him. After, I don't think he played the first league game against Donegal. He came in, and the next day out, I think he made a kick 8, 9 or 10 points. So, those 2 lads are on par. And if we get the both of them firing and we get scores from the rest of the team, if we can get, I think down through the years, Tyrone have had a half-forward line that haven't been contributing on the scoreboard as such. And when you look at the other couple of big teams, that's a huge benefit to them when they can get other players on the scoreboard, as well as your likes of your David Cliffords or your Dean Rafts. If you can get the spread of scores, it helps. And I think that Tyrone are trying to unearth a few new players in those positions.
Mm. And it's just to jump to Division 2 and what Jim McGuinness, what we saw from his Donegal team the first day out against Cork, some of that hunting and packs and pressing that they did high up the pitch. Do you reckon that's a feature of what we'll see for the year, or is part of that, in the conditions that were there last week, it kind of made sense to press when you're, just the wind like that makes it so difficult to transfer the ball 30 yards across the pitch if you want to break the press.
No, that's right. Conditions play a huge factor in those type of games. I would imagine that Jim McGuinness is going to listen to the interview after the game where he said that there was an awful lot of work done with the ball. I would imagine that that he's done a mountain of running. I think they went on a warm. They went to Portugal or somewhere on a bit of a training camp, and you would imagine that they've done a heavy bit of work. So I would imagine that as a template on how he thinks he's going to continue going forward, because notoriously we thought of Donegal maybe the low block and turning people over and going on the counter attack, but definitely I was impressed with the highlights that I seen of Donegal. Cork are a decent side, so. They still have a few of the stalwarts there from Jim's first time, Ryan McHugh and Paddy McBrady. So I liked how they went about it. I love that type of pressing. I love that sort of, I love that rope effect where if someone's going to close someone down, the other person's heading towards where he thinks the ball's going to, and a knock-on effect. I really enjoy that, and it sets it up for, it pushes the other team to make the mistake rather than dropping everyone back to 65 and the other team's controlling the ball at that stage. So I really like it, and I think it's a template that Jim's going to continue to use throughout the league and going forward into summer.
Just on Donegal, Kyle, do you feel the kind of buzz and momentum, like you're not a million miles from them? Like the minute he's gone back, it just seems to have lifted the whole thing. And now they're getting big crowds at the kind of cup games. They're getting, like, what did they hit the other day? 121 in league games is unheard of, really, especially even for a McGuinness team. But the wheel kind of seems to be rolling again. They're in Division 2, I think, when he took over initially, weren't they? Won Division 2 in 2011. They'll probably go at it again this year. Like, do you see, like, it's kind of it's an exciting thing looking in, but it's a worrying thing as well when you're probably going to be playing them at some stage. Yeah, no, look, I would say that comes down to the Jim McGuinness factor, as such. He's sort of that iconic figure in Donegal. Yes, he went and tried his hand at the soccer, which that adds a wee bit more intrigue to the whole thing, coming from Celtic and going out to China and trying his hand in America as well. So he'd be like a folklore up there, and those lads who. We have, as I mentioned, the few older lads who have played underneath him, but all those younger fellas, if that was me and you were 19 or 20 or 21 and you were coming into panel, you'd be chomping at the bit to impress him. You would want to do as much as you physically can. And, with him maybe setting out that template and fellas really buying into that, the younger lads maybe thinking it was going to go one way and now it's went the other with the press. So, it's exciting from a Donegal point of view. I would imagine that it's getting a lot of people back on board, and I don't know what other appointment would have got that buzz in Donegal. I think that's key that they got that. I was at a few of the league games last year in Donegal, and there was I'm not sure if any of us would have been at them, but there was before games the ball was through, and there was an awful lot of talk about the manager before the matches ever started. There was like a doom and gloom about the place, where now, when you're going to go to the Donegal games, people be chomping at the bit to get and see them and see how they're getting on, and they hopefully, from their point of view, that they'll have all their best players available for them. Can I just ask you, Kyle? You mentioned there about the Jim McGuinness factor and like lads wanting to impress him. Would that have been the same when you went in with Tyrone? Like Mickey Harte is this big kind of mythical figure almost that, I don't know, you'd be afraid to be kind of letting him down, or you had certain standards expected of you. What's it like even playing underneath him? I didn't impress him in 10 years, so no, that's right. There, Mickey probably had a fear factor nearly when we were playing underneath him, where he had an awful lot of respect from the players, and he commanded that respect. He had earned it as well throughout his success at underage level and under 21s and coming up, and whenever we moved into the senior ranks, he had the respect automatically. So it's you wanted to impress him with probably work rate and scores or whatever sort of job that you were set out with. So I would imagine that is the same for the new fellas that's coming into Donegal. They'll want to get on the pitch. They'll want to show them what they can do. Just on what you said there, Kyle, is that like Like, did you feel in your head that you weren't his type of player? Like, if he didn't impress you, or was he looking for, you know, an inside forward that was going to do all the work, or what was that dynamic like?
There's probably a couple of aspects fell into that category. I come into a stage where football was in the transition. 2000 and between 2009 2010, Tyrone were there's a few of the elder statesmen at that time. We had still had the likes of Stephen O'Neill and Owen Mulligan and, you know, Conor Gormley's hugely, you know, successful players in Tyrone status. Them players were their icons, their fellas that I couldn't wait to get in and playing with. So probably come into a period of time where football was in transition, and I came off the back of a minor season where I was hugely successful, and probably thought in my own head that it was going to be a click of the fingers and this was going to continue into senior level. But I got a rude awakening whenever I went to mark Keith Higgins in Omagh in a league game, and Keith's not the biggest, but just was constantly putting the back foot, constantly was there. It wasn't it was a rude awakening to senior football, and in a number of aspects it took me a few years to realise that as well as it being a transitional period in football, in that period, I probably wasn't the best benefit to myself in that period of time.
If there was any advice you could give to like an 18-year-old, a guy just going from underage into senior ranks, Kyle, or if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give a bit of advice, what would you be saying to yourself or to other aspiring footballers?
It's a good question, because you know, you hear lots of different opinions where fellas, you know, would say, one fella would say, you know, you need to work harder, and the other people says you need to be yourself and, you know, let your game flow, do what you're good at. But at my period of time, I just wish that I devoted as much time as I have when I've got, you know, from about 25 or so till I realized, you know, that you need to work probably that wee bit harder and take care of your body off the pitch. I run into an awful lot of issues with it turned out that every year I seemed to need a wee bit of surgery of some sort. So I had a couple of injuries that were for full year out and rehab, and those affected me and probably lost wee bits of things like speed and different stuff. But if I was giving advice to anyone now coming into a panel, or any young lad, will be just your work probably off the ball, because I think when you work naturally hard off the ball, the rest of the things sort of fall into place after that, where rather than you're sort of waiting until something happens and then you kick into gear, where I was probably the latter. You know, my work rate wouldn't have been where it needed to be. And look, I got back into the Tyrone panel probably through, you know, what I didn't do at an early age, I done a wee bit later, and it was probably just too late at that stage, you know.
Was it satisfying to get back though and get another go at least, and prove yourself as well, to get that you were, you know, you obviously put the work in to get back involved again?
Yeah, I always knew that you know, I had the capabilities, and as I say, look, I run into a number of injuries. I ended up needing 7 operations throughout my 10-year stint with Tyrone, and those things tend to hamper you. So it's satisfying, yes, because I went back to my club. I got my confidence up. I went into a good scoring spree. Was playing sort of middle of the field for my club and getting on a lot of ball, and was let it sort of express himself to a certain degree. So it was satisfying in that regard. Coming back in, I probably didn't see the amount of game time that I wanted with Tyrone either. Featured in a few league games. Come on in a few games as well, but just didn't get where I wanted to get. But look, that's the nature of life. But it's, I suppose, that's the hand you're dealt. You just have to play it.
And when you retired from intercounty football, I think it was the end of the 2020 season.
Yeah.
Did it take you was there any adjustment period for you in terms of being able to go to Tyrone matches and relax and enjoy it as a supporter? Or some players I've talked to, and they struggle to even watch the games after.
2021, was that the first COVID season? Would that be right?
End of 2020 would have been, yeah.
Yeah, so this 2021 would have been whenever we had neutral league games. Is that right? We had northern teams playing each other. Well, that was my sort of first introduction to a wee bit of co-commentary work where I'd been doing it. So I ended up going sort of straight into that aspect of things, and I ended up doing the which was really, really weird. I ended up doing the All-Ireland final that year for co-commentary, and it was a surreal feeling because I remember watching the lads down, and as they'd be friendly with Darren McCurry, would have been, me and him would have been very close, and I mean, sort of waving up, so that was, I never really got the period of time where I went and watched Tyrone as a spectator. I sort of just went into it, and when you're doing those sort of co-commentaries, as you well know, that you sort of have to look at it from a different point of view. You can't have your Tyrone hat on or whatever. So I haven't got that period of time yet. No, I'm sort of doing a wee bit of media work at them at the minute, but it's still, look, when you're at them, you still want Tyrone to win.
It's a nice distraction to have, though, isn't it? Because you feel like you're going to a match and you're kind of working, so you don't get time to think too much about, oh, I wish I was in there kicking this point or kicking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I did wish that I was part of the All-Ireland final team that the day that they beat Mayo, but no, you're right. You don't have that. You sort of have to have a non-biased opinion and call it as you see it, because there's no point of going there and watching it as a spectator, because you're not going to be able to point out the points of view that you need to do as a co-commentator. So it's a nice distraction. You're getting into games and you're getting in free, so it doesn't really matter.
Kyle, this weekend, Kerry are going up to Monaghan. They've already lost to Derry. Do you think, is it one of these things where they could really, really do with a result here? And obviously Monaghan had a great start against Dublin winning at Croke Park.
Yeah, Monaghan were fantastic against Dublin. That's one of those games you just wish, when you're watching it, you don't want it to end. You just want it to continue, because there's moments of brilliance happening everywhere. There's players taking each other on. It's sort of just like a game of basketball. It's end to end, and yeah, there'll be a bit of pressure on Kerry going up till. Is it in Clones? Is it? Yeah. So there's a bit of pressure on them, and Monaghan's going to be riding a crest of a wave. Some of those young lads who performed really, really well, including Stephen O'Hanlon, it's going to be a huge test for Kerry. I don't know. I think I read that David and Paddy Clifford were getting a rest for the first 2 weeks. So I wonder, was it ever in Jack O'Connor's plans to halt that break a week early and get these lads back in, because going up to Clones is no easy feat, and especially with Monaghan coming off a great victory against Dublin, and so many players playing so well. You can get results where someone can pull you out of fire, but Monaghan had a hugely successful team performance.
And can I ask you then about Rory Beggan and this? He's going to the NFL, doing his best to get a contract there. And Vinnie Corey keeps getting asked about it, and of course he was like, I hope Rory comes to his senses, which I don't know, maybe that could get Rory's back up, just the wording of it or whatever. But what are your thoughts on, you've obviously, you spent a bit of time down in Australia with AFL, but what are your thoughts on Rory at this stage of his career, looking for an NFL spot?
I think it's absolutely fabulous. I love to see it. I think that the 5 or 6 lads who are going to the NFL Combine, I think it's courageous from Rory, probably at his age. The other lads are probably not just at his age profile, but it's. I'm lucky enough to see an awful lot of Scottstown games this year and Monaghan games throughout the course of last year. Maybe these are slightly different, but to me there's no better striker of the ball in Ireland than Rory Beggan for his run up that he takes, the length of distance that he can get on a kick from such a short run up. It's great. But I've seen a few clips of the NFL, just the kicking and just the few highlights that have been on Twitter or such. But I think it's great to see, and more power to someone who can go out and possibly get on. I think it's a 53-man roster for an NFL squad. So if someone done that, then I suppose there's always a first. I know there is a lad playing for the Green Bay Packers that has a bit of Irish heritage throughout us, but for someone to transition from our game to be a kicker, it'd be great to see. And I don't know Rory awfully well. I've only spoke to him once or twice, but it'd be great to see someone transition, get a contract, and. I do have a wee bit of following in the NFL. I'd like to keep an eye on it, so it'd be interesting to see how someone like that would get on.
Yeah, Daniel Whelan, I think. Is that the name of the guy with the Packers?
That's right. Yeah. I just seen as that there was talk of him. I don't know what where he is. Was he born here and moved out there at a young age? I think. And
I think so. Yeah.
so he has a bit of he is an Irish lad, but just for someone in our game to transition, we've had we continuously have players go to soccer and probably rugby and AFL as well. So it's a first, and I'm sure all the lads will be keen to be that first person. You've seen Conor Bradley doing so well for Liverpool. It's great to see someone transition to another sport, and the back end, it seems to be everybody. Just I'm a Man United supporter, and it kills me to say I love to see Conor Bradley do well.
And did you know about him, like, as he was coming up, because he did play Gaelic football for his club also? But did you know here's a coming superstar?
I didn't. I'll be honest. Ronan McNamee would be from the same club, and I had seen him. I'd seen he would have played a bit for Bolton last year, or maybe the year before, and he had excelled in that league, and he'd done really well. But I think that's probably a sign of Klopp as well, that he's willing to back such a young lad. He has a huge potential, but that just epitomizes what's going on. I didn't know an awful lot about him, I'll be honest. He sprung on my radar very, very quickly to become. It looks like he's going to be a superstar.
He really does. He really does. Look, just a final question then, Kyle. Who do you think is going to push for the All-Ireland this year? It just feels wide open.
That's we sort of say that every year, and then it comes down to Dublin and Kerry. But it's very hard to read so early in the league. Mayo were hugely impressive. Monaghan were impressive. Tyrone had a good win. Kerry are probably not at where they want to be. Likewise with Dublin, with their championships, they'll feel that they'll come through them with a bit more ease. So, Derry's obviously, I mentioned at the start, in the top three teams. It is hugely wide open. But, at the end of the day, we can only get down to 4 teams in the semi-final. So I would imagine that the 4 teams at the minute for me would be, to get at the nitty-gritty, the end of the season, would be Dublin, Kerry, Mayo and Derry. That's at the minute, that's for me would be, just from what I've seen in the first weekend. I know that you can never write Monaghan off. Monaghan's going to be thereabouts, and we don't know. Tyrone's a bit unexposed at the minute with such a new scattering of players, so they could come out of the woodwork again and give a run. But just from the last number of seasons, I know Mayo probably didn't have the season that they wanted last year, but they look to have a bit about them after last weekend, and a few new players back on board, and so that would be the 4 teams that I think could be featuring in early July.
Okay, well, look, Kyle, really appreciate you joining us, and I'm sure we'll see you in a press box before too long. No
bother. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Kyle. Good man.
Great to have Kyle on there. Galway weren't really mentioned in the runners and riders, and it's year 5 under Pádraig Joyce. They didn't start well against Mayo last week. They were missing some key players, the likes of Sean Kelly again. Paul Conroy only came on at half-time. Would you be concerned by how they've started the year now? Because surely they'd want to hit the ground running. Shane Walsh will be 31 this year. Damien Comer's gone 30. It has to be now.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2022, it's pretty consistent the whole way through, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? There weren't as many peaks and troughs. You look at 2020, Mayo gave them that woeful spanking in the first game back after COVID, and then they were kind of under pressure.
Especially against a rival, to get spanked by a rival like that last week on a year where you're going to have to make good. It just doesn't smell right. It could all turn around quickly, but there's no way Pádraig Joyce is happy with that.
No, and on home soil as well, Shane. Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of pride in how you particularly perform on home soil. It is a little bit of a worry. Obviously, Peter Cook's not involved either, but they do have Liam Silk back. They've Kieran Malloy back. Hopefully Comer will stay fit. You'd imagine Shane Walsh should be kind of mad for road this year. So, a couple of new players and even some of their older players hopefully will be a bit fresher and kind of bouncing going into this year. Hopefully Sean Kelly will be able to stay fit as well. But I'd be the same as you. I'd be a little bit worried that as a trend of what's going to follow. Now that could be ripped up next weekend or whatever, but they're generally a team where the graph is, if they're going well, the graph is upward or steady at least. And you want consistency, even if you're losing to Mayo. It's, you know, a couple of points on home soil while you're missing a few lads, not 8 points and a totally off color display. So you would be a little bit worried after last weekend.
Do you see this? Like, I see in one or two places people saying maybe they should move Sean Kelly to midfield. Like, he is a brilliant player, like whether he's playing full back or anywhere else. And people saying that, look, Brendan Rodgers was moved to midfield with Derry, and look, you could do a similar switch because Sean Kelly's such a dynamic player and all that kind of stuff. Part of me is thinking he's so good where he is anyway, and he's going to make 3 or 4 bursts and maybe get a point or two that you probably have the best of every world at the moment, where he is. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, no, I'd be the same as you. I think he's offensively, could be more potent where he is at the minute, just because you get to build a head up of steam and you get to maybe come from a lot deeper. To me, like, he's one of the better defenders in the country as well. That I think I'd be leaving him where he is. I'd just be trying to make sure that they get him back to his best and get him back fully fit and keep him fit. But no, I think they've a decent few options around the middle of the field as well. So I'd be happy enough with him where he is at the minute.
And Dublin Mayo this weekend, Mayo would like to keep their good run, and Dublin would obviously be looking to make sure it's not back-to-back defeats. And look, it's just nearly always an entertaining game to watch.
Yeah, Dublin and Kerry, similar, both on the road this weekend. I know it's early, but they both like to get a point, at least a point on the board. You don't want to be, the last thing either of those teams want to be dragged into is, you know, a battle to get points to stay up. And I know, I'm just saying that, like, they're going on the road. They need to get something on the board, I'd imagine, this weekend. It looked like at stages of that game against Monaghan that Dublin were going to kick on, particularly in the first half. Never really happened. It's always interesting when they meet, and it'll be interesting this weekend too. But yeah, Dublin and Kerry, I would say, will want to get something on the board. And Kerry is just on that as well. They don't want to be, I'm sure they have a plan for the Cliffords. They don't want to have to, a point Kyle mentioned there, don't want to have to change that plan or rip it up at all or rush them back. So they both would like to get points on the board this weekend, definitely.
Yeah, good comment in here from Traumspieler. Every team now is fullbacks bursting from deep. Lavelle from Monaghan, McBrien, Mayo, Graham Sullivan, Kerry, Lee Gannon, all noticeable last weekend.
Graham O'Sullivan was like an auxiliary attacker the other day. He spent way more time nearly up front. He was their best player, and he was probably their best forward in a way.
Yeah, look, the league is just so entertaining to watch, particularly in the football side. I just hope the change in the hurling side gives it a bit more jeopardy, and we're, you know, on the edge of our seats a bit, because too often you're like going through the league being like, oh, this doesn't matter. And then you get to the Leinster Championship and you're like, we know who's getting through that, and you're just totally reliant on the Munster Championship. But anyway, look, hopefully that change makes a difference. Just before we pivot back towards the hurling, the Sigerson Cup quarterfinals were on this week. So TUD, they lost to University of Ulster. That was 16 points to 110. Now, the Glen players like Conor Glass and Ethan Doherty, there was talk of them playing with 3 different teams in the space of 11 days, but they didn't feature. It was Derek Canavan who was on form there. UCD beat University of Galway. That was 114 to 16, so great win there for UCD. UL, they saw off DCU by 14 points to 110, so that's into the last 4 for the 3rd year in a row for UL. And Maynooth, they beat Queens by 10 points to 9. And the semi-final draw now will see UCD against UL and Maynooth against Ulster University. That's going to be, I think, the week of, both games are actually on Thursday, February the 8th as well. So, yeah.
I wonder, because given that they didn't feature last night, will Conor Glass or Ethan Doherty play at all for Ulster University? It's only potentially 2 games from here on in. Imagine.
They'd like to win it.
Yeah. Imagine the lift having the 2 of them involved would give. Interesting on Conor Glass as well. It was obviously a big point of debate, but he just said, he was on the GA social on BBC, and he just said about playing 6 days later for Derry after the All-Ireland club win. He just said, they didn't chat to us. This is Mickey Harte and Gavin Devlin. In the build-up to the club campaign, they didn't chat to us until the Wednesday after. They gave us our room to enjoy it. And that's why some of the backlash that they've got over the last couple of days for playing us, you know, let us enjoy it. But as players, we did enjoy it. We were drinking until Wednesday. We were enjoying each other's company until Wednesday. We did a quick sort of flush on the bike on the Wednesday with a bit of conditioning. Us Glen players went up to Owen Begg and had a quick chat. Mickey and Gavin sort of told us their plans of wanting us to come down. We as Glen players had chatted beforehand about it, and we said, what way is the body feeling? What way are you going to do this? And we said, as Glen players, we had sort of made up the decision, regardless of what Mickey and Gavin said. But it did take us a while to sober up to make to get our minds straight. So according to Conor Glass, anyway, they were the ones that made up their mind, and they didn't have their minds made up for them. So you had to take that in face value.
Yeah, I'd still, kind of keep the point that it should have been taken out of their hands. They should never have even had a decision to make on that. By the way, keep an eye out for the oURgaME Fantasy League. So you can go to fantasyhurling.ie and put in that code there. If it's not working, let us know. But that should work anyway. Maybe I copy and pasted it incorrectly, but hopefully that's right. We need to talk a little bit more about the hurling, because there was a couple of games that we skipped over. Definitely worth talking about this fixture between Clare and Cork this weekend. You were at their Munster Hurling League game, weren't you?
I was, yeah. And both had a good whack of new faces, but you definitely would say Clare had a lot more new faces than Cork did, and I thought Clare performed quite well given what they're missing. Again, hard to know exactly what both of them are trying to get out of it this weekend. But if you're able to get a win against, if either of them are able to get a win, then they have a great chance of getting the 3 wins that are needed to get through. So both are busy-ish with Fitzgibbon at the minute as well. So there's a bit of a juggling act for Pat Ryan and for Brian Lawn. And obviously Clare are going to have a whole league campaign without Tony Kelly. So there's massive opportunities for the likes of Robin Mounsey, Patrick Crotty, and a few more to really get a lot of game time and have themselves in a good standing going into the Munster Championship. Yeah,
Cork have named their panel there. It's probably not too much jumping out at us. It's a good quality panel. Like, there's quality all across the board. But for Cork, it's just trying to finally make good on the talent that they have. And
is there an X factor? Is there an X factor in that squad?
Like, what to you? What's an X factor? Like, I mean, and do you mean a new X factor? Because they still have Patrick Horgan, for example, Micheál Mullins from Whitechurch there, who was the captain of the under-20s. Maybe he's an X factor. Is that
maybe? Ben Cunningham? Looking for potentially, guys that are going to potentially light it up away from, the regulars that we've known that have done it for the last decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's quality across the board, but is there someone who's going to absolutely take over the year having not... I mean, Alan Connolly could have a big season this year, because he has had, he was injured a lot there last year. So if he got a really good run at it, maybe he could. Jack O'Connor has probably been quiet for the last season or two. Maybe he could have a big one. But in terms of like names that we're not all that familiar with, I don't know, it's tough to sort of really hang your hat on anyone just yet. They could come out of the woodwork, but it's tough to hang your hat on anyone.
I'm just looking at the squad and kind of seeing a hell of a lot of similar type of players and even similar kind of size profile wise. Maybe I'll be wrong. I think Decky Dalton is out for most of the league as well.
Yeah, he is.
So listen, maybe that gives Ben Cunningham a chance to get a sustained run maybe in the league and really kind of nail down a place. Doesn't look like Ger Collins is on the squad, not according to that list anyway. So he'd kind of been understudy to his brother Patrick, but it looks like Brian Saunderson's going to take that role, and potentially I think he could give him a fair run for his money for the number 1 spot as well, to be honest with you. He's the under-20 goalie from last year.
Yeah, and I'd asked you earlier about the Offaly under-20s who got to the final last year, and you had said that most of them are still underage this year. But also, like, if we're looking to see who's coming from Cork, 5 of the 6 starting forwards from the under-20 final last year are still underage. So
that's worrying. That's worrying, isn't it?
But that would explain why maybe Ben Cunningham is the most likely name to come through, and the rest of them are still very young. So we probably shouldn't expect them to be coming through just yet.
No, probably not just yet. They're obviously going to have a bit of a balancing act with a couple of those lads as well. If they want to win another under-20, or see, the thing is, when it comes to the cut and thrust of it, I think they're just going to want to do everything possible to get a Munster. That's the way it's going to be. So lads might end up potentially missing under-20 campaigns as a result.
Yeah. So Verney's Cork bashing continues, says Richard.
Verney's no. Verney's Cork.
Come across that way to me.
Verney's Cork questioning continues, and it's all right to ask the question.
Okay, so Dublin are going to host Tipperary at Parnell Park this weekend. Galway are going to face up against Westmeath. And whatever it is about Galway, the teams that aren't, among the challengers, that aren't up towards the top end of Liam McCarthy, they always just tend to pull them apart. So, you'd be hoping for the best for Westmeath here, but generally it's a tough outing for them.
Yeah, you'd be hoping for the best, fearing for the worst, though, based on recent results now, you'd have to say. Galway seem to put up like stupid scorelines almost, 5-27, 2-30, these type of scorelines. It just seemed to go to town. So there's very little to suggest that won't be the same this weekend, and I'd expect a lot of change from the Galway team that played the Walsh Cup final to the Galway team that's going to tug out this weekend, and maybe a few kind of the older faces back as well. On Dublin and Tipp, I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, this fixture hasn't been very kind to Dublin in recent years. Would I be right in saying?
Well, at Parnell Park, it has been relatively kind to them, but in general, when Tipperary play Dublin at either Croke Park or in Semple Stadium, it generally goes one way. Now, there might be a fixture that I'm not thinking of, but generally, I think, remember even Tipp had went down to 10 men early, probably 2019 or something.
10 men.
Sorry, 14 men. God, but 14 men quite early at Croke Park against Dublin, and still ended up winning by 9-10 points or more, something like that. Whatever it is, maybe we're talking about Galway and the way they fillet the teams that aren't up at the top end. Whatever it is, Dublin suit playing Tipperary when it's on one of those bigger fields.
Maybe I'm being unfair as well, because did Dublin beat Tipperary under Colin Bonner in Thurles? Am I right?
They did actually, yeah.
Yeah,
they won by a point. Yeah, that was the game that I wasn't couldn't quite remember.
Yeah, but they generally this is generally Tipp's fixture. I remember them playing up in Croke Park and Paddy Matter throwing over 2 points in a row from 2 consecutive Dublin puckouts. And a Galway, I wouldn't say a second string team, but there's some regulars and a lot of newbies put Dublin fairly easily to the sword in the second half of that game, the last day. We don't know. O'Donnell's unlikely to be fit as well, is he, for this weekend? I
presume he's not available. Yeah. He sort of hurt his hamstring against Galway in the Walsh Cup. Don't think it was that bad, but they'd probably just be minded him for now.
Yeah, and the Nafina crew aren't back, and Donald Burke's not back yet. Well, I'm sure he's nearing fitness, but he'd probably be eased into it midway through the league. So
Sean Curry was there in the Walsh Cup semi-final against Galway.
Okay, yeah, he was actually. Yeah, we don't know whether Liam Rush is back. We're not 100% sure.
I don't think we'll see Liam Rush. Yeah. I'm not sure we'll see Liam Rush playing with the county anymore, just because of the amount of injuries he's had. It's nothing to do with quality. He's obviously still got something to offer, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure we're going to see Chris Crummy. I had been kind of led to believe that we would, but now I'm not entirely sure if he is going to be around this year. Again, if he's not, that would be a huge loss to them. And the other thing is, traditionally it's seen as go up to Parnell Park and you're going to come up against a really fierce physical test, because it is a bit of a tighter ground, and maybe that's somewhat because it's kind of walled with concrete all the way around. It does feel that bit tighter. There's not that huge runoff area, and also the stands are on top of you a little bit. But I don't know if this Dublin team is a big, massive physical team and if it necessarily suits them. I think Tipperary are going to pick a land of the Giants this year. I think there's going to be a big spine. I think there's going to be a lot of big ignorant jokes around the middle of the field. So if anything, both of these teams will be earmarking this game. But if anything, I think this could end up suiting Tipperary in this tight pitch.
Yeah, this is if they struggle for points somewhat or lose a couple of games, a lot will come back to this game on who gets in the top 3. So yeah, and I'd be agreeing with you. Dublin got out of Parnell Park for their Leinster games last year for a reason. Well, for 2 of them anyway. So because they feel like the wide open spaces of Croke Park suit them more. So now I'd be seeing a Tipperary win probably by 5 or 6 at the weekend, realistically.
Yeah, Dublin do have a couple of pacey players. If Dara Purcell, his clubmate Brian Hayes, a few players like that. Conor Burke, interesting to see how he goes, assuming he starts centre back. But Micheál Donoghue, it's funny, he was a former Tipperary selector back in 2014, wasn't it, or 2015 with Eamon O'Shea. And he's obviously up against that Tipperary team now. And then the last day when I was at in the Walsh Cup, and I was watching Eamon O'Shea, being part of the warm-up for Galway. And then you're thinking, and that will be the case, obviously, this weekend. He'll be with Galway. And you're looking at David Hurty as a coach with Tipperary. 10 years ago, if you were told that Eamon O'Shea would be working alongside Henry Shefflin and that David Harte be working in the Tipperary camp, who would have believed you?
I'd say even better again if you'd said it after the 2010 All-Ireland final, if you'd said one of the main coaches to bring down Kilkenny will be involved with one of the main protagonists who limped off injured that day with a Galway squad, and David Harte, who was subkeeper I think that day, will now be involved with Tipperary. It's amazing the way it turns.
Yeah, it really is. Actually, a quote from Richie Reid heading into the league this weekend. I meant to read it earlier. He was talking about the Kilkenny-Wexford game, which I think that would be quite an entertaining game at Nolan Park. But he said, Lyng has said to us that we're taking the league very seriously. I think that's good. I think that's a great thing to hear. And I'm glad Richie said it as well. You want to feel like these teams are looking to put up big performances here.
Oh, God, yeah. But it's a perception then. Like, it's almost like if managers and squads are taking a competition seriously, spectators start to take it seriously as well. How do you get a buzz about things? You get a buzz about things when you know both teams are going to go pretty gung-ho for it, and it's going to be a serious contest, not an exhibition game where there's no gloves been laid on players. Do you know what I mean? So that creates a buzz and anticipation about a competition in itself. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully there's a bit more. Hopefully this year the Hurling League is a little bit of a kind of a pre-appetizer for next year, where again there will be more in the line. Should be no bogey games next year either, with the top 7 being in 1A and the next 7 being in 1B. And 1B will also next year, it will suit the like of an Offaly or a Kerry or a Carlow, because you're playing what you would view as definitely 3 or 4 winnable games. And if you get results in a couple of those, you have a good chance of staying up.
Yeah, Crackety Ash says, will take some convincing for me to rate Dublin after what we witnessed that day. I presume he's talking about the game against Galway, when, to be fair, they missed 3 goal chances and had 16 wides, and some of them were quite poor. Cuckoo says you can't see Dublin beating any Munster teams come championship. They have a long way to go if they do want to do that. But yeah, just now it's tough to see it. And I think we kind of touched on it already, but just in terms of Wexford, there is that buzz around them, isn't there? You know, irrespective of how last year ended up, there is that buzz around them again.
Yeah, no, there is a little bit of a buzz, and they have one of their own as manager, and Jason Ryan is in. He's obviously a former inter-county manager, obviously with Wexford and with Kildare, and he was in with Cork footballers recently. He's David Franks in as well, who's obviously done great work with Ballygunner. He's Éanna Martin in, Des Mighton, Damien Fitzhenry. It's a fair old backroom team. Like you'd say, Rossiter is inexperienced at senior inter-county level, but he's surrounded himself with, very, very, solid guys who have a good bit of experience in various fields. So, there seems to be a bit of a hum about them again. They are going to need to get that probably 8 to 10 experienced players. They're going to need to get them back on the pitch over the coming weeks and months as well, though. Like there's a fair list there that, Liam Ryan, Matt O'Hanlon, Liam McGovern, Dee O'Keefe, Conor McDonald, Joe O'Connor, they're going to need to get that cohort back on the pitch and have them ready to go come Leinster time.
Yeah, I just wonder with Limerick and the drive for 5 bid here, like, what's the most likely thing to catch them? And we touched on it with Adrian already, but we didn't really talk about it. Like, is it going to be injuries? Okay, they've ruled that out before. But I just wonder, like we always thought, well, look, I don't think they'd be able to absorb the hit, though, if Cian Lynch got injured, and then they did. And we don't think they'd be able to absorb the hit if Declan Hannon did, but they managed it. And then the same with Sean Finn, and then the same with, different guys. And you're just wondering, is there any player that actually couldn't get by without, like, do they have a replacement for Aaron Gillan? Maybe that's the link that they can't do without. Maybe Nicky Quaid is. It doesn't matter. Is the drive for 5 inevitable?
It's definitely not inevitable, but there's a compelling case to see how they can do 5 in a row. I don't know. Maybe you're just going down to a ranking order of the most important players that they can't do without, because they've already done without 3 of them. But they definitely do not have, somebody to come in for Nicky Quaid that is road tested. Like that's a fact. They do not. Nobody has played. Has anybody played hardly a championship minute for Limerick in goals in the last decade? Maybe I don't. Not off the top of my head. Maybe Barry Hennessy played. I don't think he did even, and he's not in the squad now. Will O'Donoghue will be high up my list of lads that they can't do without, because they don't have another enforcer type of player and somebody who's obviously adept to slip in at number 6 as well if they need it. And I'd say Galan as well. Like look at even when he was missing for stages of the league last year, they looked a bit blunt up top. He came back and they just looked a different outfit altogether. But yeah, they've absorbed fair losses now at this stage. I do think it comes back to a lot of their own hunger, and whether that same thirst is still there to go to the well. They've proven that they've gone to the well over and over and over again. That's probably, to me, that's the only real doubt. If you're telling me who's the biggest threat to Limerick, I'd say Limerick are the biggest threat to Limerick.
Do you know what? I was actually I just decided to check all their ages there, and as I'm looking, and I'll read them out just to see, miles on the clock, age, could any of that hold them back? And I'm just seeing some of the jobs here. Sean Finn, his occupation, risk assessor. Isn't that ideal for a cornerback?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the age profile, how old they'll be if they get to an All-Ireland final this year. Nicky Quaid will be 34. Doesn't really matter. Let's call a spade a spade. Sean Finn, he'll be 27. Mike Casey, the same. Barry Nash, 26. Diarmaid Burns, he'll be 29. I think actually we're being sold a pup with these ages. I'm looking at an article on the Times. I'm not sure that's true because Declan Hannon's 31 now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think Diarmaid Burns might be. He's probably 29 already, is he?
He's one of the older ones. Yeah. 2015
would
would have been his last year of under 21, and that'll be 9 years ago. He'd definitely be 30 this year anyway.
Yeah, no, actually, do you know what? This article is from 2 years ago. So actually, Quaid will be 35, Finn and Casey will be 28, Nash 27, 30 for Burns, 31 for Hannon, 31 for Dan Morrissey, 30 for Will O'Donoghue, I believe. Darragh O'Donovan might be 29, Hegarty the same, Kyle Hayes 26, obviously that's still young. Tom Morrissey will still be late 20s, Gillan 27, that's fine. Same with Seamus Flanagan. I think Cian Lynch is only going to be 28. So in general, is the age profile a big thing? There's a number of players there who are around 30 or not 30, but they're still, I don't think we could necessarily think they're going to run out of gas this year, are they, physically?
No, they're all still the right side of a number, really, aren't they? They've no outfield player that they're relying on that's going to be 35 or 36 this year. Do you know what I mean? And that they've no outfield player that they really have to mind, do they? They don't really have to mind any of them, really. You're not thinking, oh, he can't play this time of the year. He needs to be kind of eased into it. They're not really at that stage yet. Nicky Quaid is the only one, and he's playing in goal. So, it's really, more to do with concentration and execution, really. I don't think age is going to get in the way.
Are the opposition catching up? Name any team that's potentially catching up.
Well, I suppose if you look at it, Clare drew with them in 22 3 times and beat them in 23 when they played them. So is that catching up? Is having a championship victory over Limerick catching up? It probably is. It's just a matter of with Clare, can they frank it elsewhere? That's the big thing.
Yeah, fair point. And where are Limerick most likely to be caught?
Munster.
Yeah.
It has to be Munster, Shane. You have to remember, they were very close to being knocked out on that last day last year. I know you're gonna say, if my aunt had whatever, she'd be my uncle. But if it flips back and Cork win by a point, Limerick are out. Do you know what I mean? And it just the margins were very tight. It was 2 points against Waterford. They lost to Clare. It was a draw against Tipp. It was 1 point against Cork. Do you know what I mean? So that, to me, that's, if it's going to happen, that's where it's going to happen. And I think that's why 5 in a row talk will be diluted a bit as well. Because
we'll ramp it up, though.
We'll do our best.
We'll crank it up.
You can't. They won't lose the run themselves because they'll see what Munster is. And in fairness, a lot of people would have said Kylie was talking kind of raw-mesh last year when he said that it was going to be the hardest Munster championship. But that's the way it turned out, and he was proven to be totally correct. So I don't think they'll lose a run of themselves. Their most recent Munster championship was the hardest one they've ever come through. So they'll be on their guard, and Liam McCarthy will not come on their radar, Shane, I'd say, until they have one of the berths secured in Munster. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if it was a third place either.
Okay, so Division 2A round 1, Leisure against Down. Leash, of course, interesting to see how they go this year. Dan Shanahan not involved. Brian Horgan and Michael Connolly, they've joined up in the coaching team there under Willie Maher. They had a tough result against Galway recently, but, as we said, they tend to do that to the teams that aren't the top challengers. And Down were beaten in this fixture by 31 points last year. And I was reading an interview with Pierce O'Mccrickard in the Irish News with Neil Loughran, and he goes, that hurt because the next morning you're waking up and seeing about Laois Hurling recording their highest ever win, most goals scored, biggest score and a half, all these different stats were coming out that we were on the receiving end of. It took a week or two for us to say we didn't want to be the whipping boys. The Kerry and Carlow games were about performances, but we always knew it was going to come down to the Kildare game. Thankfully, we put in our best performance of the year and we got to stay up. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure at the very least they have a motivation to try to put that somewhat right.
Oh, without a doubt, Jay. You don't really forget kind of stuff like that. And all you're looking for is a crumb of motivation at times playing some teams. And that's definitely, I'd say, enough for Down. Interesting on Meath and Kildare. Obviously, Brian Dowden's first league game with Kildare coming up against Meath, managed by Saoirse Bulfin. I'm hearing there could be a few potential new recruits playing for Meath this weekend. Not anything fully gone through yet, but they could have, I think it's 3 new players potentially involved. So that'll be interesting. Then you have Kerry Carlow as well.
Kilkenny lads, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing at the minute. 2 Kilkenny, 2 Kilkenny and 1 Limerick, but not fully confirmed or anything like that. I think it's still, you know, permits have to still go through, to the best of my knowledge, anyway. And then you have Kerry Carlow in the other game. Like that game will probably go a hell of a long way to see who's going to be promoted based on results in recent years. And like realistically, Carlow are going into the Leinster Championship this year. Anything other than promotion from 2A would be a failure realistically, because they're going to be performing at a lot higher level in the Leinster Championship. And to me, like, they're going to have to be on it from the get-go here. And I think they really need to push for promotion.
And they haven't started well. Like, if you're going to count pre-season stuff, like losing by 28 to Kilkenny, by 10 to Wexford. Kerry, they look good at times against Tipperary, even though they lost by, was it 10 or 14? It was one. I might have been 14 anyway. But the likes of Dan Goggin look good in the corner. Luke Crowley, who's, you know, out for a little while. So yeah, that's in Austin Stack Park. That'll probably be a nice
lot of new faces for me, Cheno. A lot of new faces. A lot of elder statesmen, the Boyles, etc. kind of have exited stage left. So like, there's a lot of guys going to be kind of blooded over the next while. They got a few games in the Munster co-op, and some of them are going to be thrown into the deep end a small bit against Carlow this weekend.
Yeah, Wicklow against Donegal this weekend. oURgaME, we know about the management stepping away from last year that had won the Christy Ring Cup. What's the mood like? Like, have you heard much more since, because the players aren't talking, the management have left? What's going on?
Yeah, no, Bosco O'Neill is in as manager now. I think he was under 20 manager, or he's one of their greatest servants, Glen Ely player. But like, he's going to be operating off a skeleton squad compared to what they would have had. And it would be a disaster if they ended up getting relegated. But they're on the hind foot now straight away from the start. They would have had very little training under new management as well. They'd be hoping to try and get a result against Donegal on home soil, but I'd find it very, very hard to see it, being honest with you. Yeah.
Okay, Derry are going to host Tyrone in the hurling also and the football, so it's a double header this weekend. I'm just wondering, will Christy McNaughton feature for Derry this weekend? He's after transferring over from Antrim. Tyrone, this is life after Mickey McShane, Stephen McGarry, he's taken over there. So, that'll be a tasty little fixture there. Roscommon are also against London. Then Division 3A round 1, Sligo against Cavan. I'm trying to get onto, I've been trying to get onto a few of my friends that are actually playing with Cavan, Nicky Kenny and Brian Fitzgerald, giving me nothing so far.
Like Johnny Tightliff, saying nothing.
Giving me nothing, like just a reply, but the emoji where it's like that. And I'm like, oh, the arrogance of you and whatever. So getting nothing.
Them boys should be trying to promote their counties and promote the games as much as possible.
No good. So that fixture is on in Markovich Park. That's Saturday at 2:00. Louder against Monaghan at Dowdallshill, 2:00 on Sunday. Mayo against Armagh. That's on Sunday at 1:00. Armagh, they're being managed by Karen McKeegan. He's having to make do without Owen McGuinness and Nathan Curry this year. Then Division 3B round 1, Warwickshire against Leitrim and Lancashire there against Longford. Anything else before we finish up?
No, it's great to have the league back. Probably this weekend is probably not the best round of fixtures. We'll see better maybe games coming up over the coming weeks. But even Dublin Tipp, interesting to see how that goes this weekend. And I think Kilkenny Wexford is probably the one of the games of the weekend. It's going to be interesting to see if the football week 2 can live up to football week 1, because it definitely erased for the time being anyway, a lot of the negativity around the way football has been played at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, if you want to get a coaching clinic, email us at events@oURgaME. Also the same for the coaching clinic, same email address. If you want the audio podcast, it's at patreon.com/oURgaME. Michael, take her handy, and if you get her handy, take her twice.
Take her handy, Shano.